Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is John Sanei here, one half of the Expansive Business Podcast. I am in Cape Town at the moment, back in the city, the mother city, and I'm joined with my new evolved in-home office decor specialist and leadership guru, Erik Kruger in Joburg. How are you, Erik?
Hey, brother, I'm super well, and I'm really glad that you have noted the upgrade in the home studio here.
Yes,
How
it's
things going
looking
on your side?
fantastic. Yeah, it looks
Yeah,
fantastic, man.
thank
I
you, man.
really like it. Yeah, it's like nice
Yeah, we
upgrade. I
decided.
can definitely see your fiance has helped you.
Oh, I mean, she's pretty much done everything. I think the only thing I did was to choose the color of the paint that goes on the wall.
Right, right.
But we undertook a bit of a weekend mission to just transform the studio. We were speaking about it last time. That
Mm.
I think when we moved in, we were kind of just putting things into rooms, and even my studio or my office at the time was more like, well, things just are the way they are. And now that we know we're going to be in lockdown and in our home offices and home studios for much longer, I thought it's time to be a bit more intentional and create a room that I really want to be in. And so this
That's
is it. I
fantastic.
feel amazing being here this morning. So that's a really good
Yes,
start. Mm.
yes, good. I'm also in my new spot, and I've ordered a couple things to get my office right, like a blinds, so that I don't have either blackouts or total sun shock. And I got some stuff coming for behind me. So if you're watching this
Mm.
podcast on YouTube, you'll know that behind me's got nothing on it. So hopefully in the next week or so, it starts looking a little bit more, nah, just like yours. So very good. I
Does
like
it,
it.
I'm sure it doesn't really work for you to have a sort of an outside view because it's just because you have the ocean behind you, but it's going to be too strong with the light coming from behind.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
So,
it'll
lighting's
just
such
wash
a
out.
sensitive thing. Yeah, exactly. You wash
Mm.
out. And even now, I'm like half dark, half light, still trying to get it right here before the blind
Mm.
arrives. But yeah, home studios are the way we're going to be communicating for the next while. And so, yeah, you might as well be jacking it up.
For
So
sure.
look, this is also the first sort of podcast we're getting into the year. Last time we did the year word of the year, which has had such fantastic response. So thank you everybody for listening and commenting, and we hope that it made an impact on you. But just quickly, we wanted to just iterate or reiterate that the podcast this year is evolving, and we'll be looking at every single topic that we'll speak about through the lens of the human, the citizen, the self, as well as leadership and organizational structures that will be affected by the terms, the use of words that we'll be using throughout the year. So this week, we're going to be talking about a word called transformation. Big
Mm.
word. Erik, I'm sure you have many clients speaking to you about this word. What's your experience been with it?
Yeah, when you suggested that we speak about transformation, the first thing that actually popped into my head was just my own personal transformation and the feeling that it's an ever evolving process that you are a part of, and that there's so many things that sort of go hand in hand with transformation. It's this sort of beautiful, sexy word that we like to use all the time, but to put it into practice and to actually transform something from one state into another requires a hell of a lot of intention, a hell of a lot of effort, and energy to be directed consistently in that direction. So there's so many ways to sort of kick it off. And I think for today, we'll just focus on personal transformation, like you said, and then going into the next episode, we'll talk about the business side of it. We'll talk about leadership, and we'll talk about organizational transformation. So what prompted this topic for you, though?
I was speaking to some clients this week, and every single one of them's in London, another one's in Holland, and another one's here in South Africa, in Johannesburg. And every single one of them were pretty much briefing me on the exact same issue. It's like, we know we have to go through this transformation. It's very difficult. People are stressed out. People are emotional about what's going on. There's no guarantees about anything anymore. How do we help people? And how do we and some clients want to actually help their clients transform as well. So I started researching this process, and I started to realize that, resilience and transformation as we go through a second and third wave is going to become much, much more prevalent for people. And so I've actually put through a workshop, a masterclass called Transformotion. which I think is a better description of transformation in a time of hyper speed. Transition, forward, motion, in motion. And so I've broken it down into 5 days for a masterclass. And I thought, look, it's a great topic to unpack. And I can also share some of my stuff that I've been researching. I know you are researching a lot of the stuff around the leadership and transformation. And so, yes, I've gone quite deep into what is it that's holding us back as humans, what's holding us back as organizational structures, and what's holding us back to change and build businesses that are internet first. And I think that's very, very tough for a lot of people, is that many businesses have not been built for internet first. And so we have to create a new appetite. And it's not just about the self, it's about the structure, it's about the organization, it's how you measure success. It's all of these things that we need to be unpacking. And this is what we're going to do over the next 2 episodes.
Listen, so I think a good place to kick off actually is, I'd love to know some of your own, like, where's transformation been very apparent in your own life? Like, what has your transformation been?
Yeah, look, I think one of the major transformations I had was becoming nomadic. Is, you know, the idea of success for a guy in many cities around the world is the assets you own, the car you drive, it's those things that the world sees for many years as a society what success looks like. And for me to move from a car to a bicycle, to move from fancy clothes to simple clothes, to build a new success quota and idea in my mind, that was my biggest transformation over the last few years. But more recently, and like we covered in the last episode, my transformation right now is very much based on my relationship status, my health and fitness, and as well as creating new income streams of how to create money and make money in lockdown, in a different world, instead of getting into events, which I still crave like you do, but that's just not there. So it's been prevalent throughout my life over the last few years. And yes, it is hard. You know, there's a lot of mental blocks, there's a lot of habits, there's a lot of neuroscience involved in this. And when you start to understand those, you get more context in how difficult it is to actually do it, and you become more patient and you give yourself leeway rather than being a black and white person. And for you?
Yeah, you know, I mean, I think the biggest transformation for me has been going from a physiotherapist working in hospitals to being a speaker, staying on stages in front of, you know, multi-billion-dollar organizations. And I mean, for me, like, I remember when I was just, when I finished up physio, I realized I didn't want to be a physio. Like, that was like, you know, but then you come out of varsity and you've just invested 4 years into studying. I mean, it's a hell of a lot of time. And then you go and do your community service year, which for those listening from abroad, like, it's a year that you have to go and essentially work in government institutions. And it's a really good idea, actually, because you get a lot of experience in that time. But coming out of that, I realized I didn't want to be a physio. And I had to go in search of, like, what do I want to be? What do I want to do with my life? And to go from medicine to business and then to do executive coaching and speaking, I think that's been my biggest transformation. And I feel like it's, you know, that's why I feel like transformation is actually this process of constant reinvention. And maybe it's also just worth mentioning that, like, what is transformation? Like, if we talk about it, like, what exactly is it? Because it is change, but it's not incremental change. It is big change. It's when the state that you are in now is totally different from the state that you were in before. And so the way I think about it is, like, if you lose 1 kg of weight, then there's a positive change that's happened. But you only really see the transformation once you are like 10 or 20 kgs in, right? So, like, there's this change and transformation is in the same direction, but it's totally different.
Well, look, I think the thing is, it's also important to measure small wins and more small successes, so that you're not just waiting for the 10 or 20 kilos. So I think that 1 kilo is a win. It's my journey towards transformation. It's my journey towards being different for myself. And so yesterday I did a really long cycle, the longest cycle I've ever done. But, you know, I was really at the back of the pack. But for me, it wasn't, the win was I finished. A win was I finished without any cramps. So I also had to measure my transformation in a process of, okay, I'm patient in the process. I know what the end goal is to enter an Ironman. And so, yes, this is the beginning of the journey. And so, yes, I agree with you. Transformation are these big things. But I think a lot of the times what we usually do is we scold ourselves or we get upset that we haven't achieved this big, audacious goal quickly enough. And I think that's a problem with our society, this short-termism, and not really putting effort into things for long term because we get bored or sidetracked or we think it should be perfect sooner than it is. And that's a life of an entrepreneur, right? You think you've made it and you haven't, and then you have, and then you haven't, and then you have. And so, yeah, I think it's important to measure it as well. But today, let's talk about the personal transformation process, and whether you work inside an organization or you own a business or you're in leadership or wherever you are, you're still a human being. And as we go through this transition, this massive transformation that we're going through, we are all actually dealing with letting go of the old world and adopting a new one in very, very similar ways, because we have a brain, we have neuroscience, we have a heart, and we have emotions, and we have memories, and we have narratives. And so it's important for us to dive into the human factor before we get to organizational and leadership factor in the next episode. Do you want to say anything to kick it off? I've got some ideas, but let me ask you first.
Well, I thought maybe the neuroscience is a good place to start. And I know that you wanted to mention something about that.
Right. So, I've made videos about this topic, and I do speak about this in my keynotes and cover them in my masterclasses. But the very first thing that we have to realize is, as far as neuroscience is concerned, our brain is continuously throughout the day looking for something called DPO, duration, path, and outcome. And so the brain's constantly trying to figure out how long a project, the duration is, what is going to happen along the path, and what the outcome should be. And so here we are constantly, whether you're in a meeting, a holiday, just this podcast recording, the preparation on the path, but really on a grand scale, many of us have no idea what DPO is, the duration of this process, the path, what's going on with it, and the outcomes that are expected. Nobody knows. And so we all seem to be blobbing along, bobbing along, floating along, trying to figure out what's next, trying to create some level of certainty. And it's because we are addicted to outcomes. We are addicted to always having a finite finish line. And you can see this in the way schooling is set up. Finish school, get a degree, get a job. These are all guarantees of success that we're going after. We really hardly have any experimentation within our beings. We're too nervous to experiment. We're too nervous to think like an artist. We always want to do things that are securing us to a more stable life. And unfortunately, we have none of that, because it used to be enough to have a degree. It's not now. It used to be enough to go to those schools and do those Ivy League stuff. It's not really that much of a guarantee anymore. And so really people are finding old ways of guarantees falling away. And this big idea of our neuroscience not gripping onto or anchoring into the future is stressful. And so no matter what position you're in inside a business, DPO, duration, path, and outcome, become the first thing that you need to realize, that you just don't have that luxury anymore. And it's okay not to have that luxury. Erik?
I really like that. And I think it really speaks to an incredibly difficult task that's in front of everyone and anyone who's trying to go through the transformation process, which is you have to let go of where you are. And it's just, one of the things that you were mentioning earlier that I thought is so key here is that you have to give yourself permission, and there's this internal switch that needs to happen. And that's the permission switch, which is you are allowed to go and try and fail and experiment and move into a future that's unknown. And you are also allowed to let go of who you were. And you're going to be in this sort of weird stage where you're not quite sure who you are. And that's also fine. Like, you don't always have to have that certainty. In fact, like we know that certainty doesn't exist. So I think that's a great starting point. DPO, direction, path.
DPO,
DPO,
duration.
Yeah.
Duration, path, and outcome. Yeah.
Cool. What's next?
This leads us into the second point of a term that's become so famous by Carol Dweck, which is growth mindset, or Nassim Taleb, who wrote Anti-Fragility or Anti-Fragile. And this, again, both of these terms are very much about doing things for the challenge themselves and not for the outcome. And this is a tough thing. I think Seth Godin also put something out, the practice. It's really about the practice, the ability to be anti-fragile, and the ability to have a growth mindset. And some of the great examples they have in these books is, they had kids doing art, and they loved doing art because they just loved the art. And then they started getting gold stars for the art, and they loved doing art and getting the gold stars. And then all of a sudden the gold stars got taken away, and the kids stopped loving doing art. It moved from an intrinsic dopamine hit to an extrinsic dopamine hit. They've also interviewed many Navy SEALs guys, and the guys that make it through are not the buff guys with the tattoos necessarily, but the guys who actually have created a dopamine structure within their brains that says, I love the challenge, the work, the practice. And so what's happened in our world is that we've got something that they're calling dopamine reward prediction error. And this prediction error is based on even the way we brought up, because we're not given kudos by our parents for studying hard. We are given kudos by our parents and society for the result of the studying. And so what happens is that when we are not enjoying the process until we achieve X, Y, and Z, and then what happens when you achieve X, Y, and Z? It's like, it's almost like an anti-climax. So we are living in a world right now that the growth mindset and the anti-fragility really is of most important, so that we can get our intrinsic reward system going rather than an extrinsic reward system. Now, we all know that anti-fragile is the opposite of fragile. When you drop something, it breaks. That's fragile. When you drop something that's anti-fragile, it gets stronger. I enjoy the process. I enjoy uncertainty. I enjoy experimentation and challenging myself. Now, this is not an easy process because it goes far away from who we are and what we've been used to. But I've been practicing for myself in both Future Self Academy and Modern School of Modern Wisdom, both my online businesses, is that I was actually speaking to some possible faculty members from Finland and Copenhagen just the other day. And I was saying to them, it is the funnest part about this business is I have no idea what the solution is going to be. I have no idea what it's going to look like when it finishes. I'm just creating the environment to have fun, to try and create solutions and subjects that are wise in a modern way for high school kids. And that's it. That's all kind of what I'm doing at School of Modern Wisdom. And having that experimentation mindset is just really such a joy because it gives you don't have to hang on. I mean, it's our friend Nick who talks about the side hustle. And one of the major things of a side hustle is that you're not that emotionally invested in it. You're enjoying it and you're going with it, but it's that grip of anxiousness that it must be a success that kills us and takes us out of the intrinsic dopamine hit to an extrinsic one.
I love that you brought up the challenge because I've been reflecting on it quite a bit that when we start this journey of like wherever we want to go, like transformation, being a better version of who we are, often like you said, we're not clear on exactly what that end product might look like. And so therefore, like one of the most direct and most effective ways of personal development and therefore transformation is to find a challenge and overcome it. Like that's it. Like if you have no idea what to do at the moment with your life, go find a challenge and overcome it. And it's actually like, that's how we've defined being dangerous as well. Dangerous has been this big thing that I've tried to boil down into one sentence. And the one sentence is that to be dangerous is to have a certain pattern of thinking, feeling, and acting that empowers you to overcome the challenges that confront you. And to me, that is like, we have challenges all around us in every aspect of our lives. And all you need to do is to go sit down for 5 minutes and make a list, and you'll find plenty that you can go and like say, well, if I need to overcome this challenge, who do I need to become? What do I need to do? Which skills do I need to learn? Which mental model do I need to adapt? What kind of an emotional state do I need to inhabit? And once you have that, you are well away on your journey to transformation. So I love that you framed it in terms of the challenge.
Yeah, look, I think we try and bring as much comfort into our lives. And that's kind of become the thing, is how much more comfortable can we be? We do everything to become comfortable. We hardly do anything to become uncomfortable. And look, neither of us are perfect in this scenario. I still use Uber Eats. But the truth is that I'm also wanting to challenge myself and choose certain subjects to want to go in and challenge yourself. So, for example, with my relationship status and wanting to build a harmonious relationship, I've hired a coach who specifies on that and helps me with that. So that's become a challenge. I've got some notes here behind the camera talking about those things, you know. And so, yes, that's a topic I've taken. Fitness is another one, and reinventing my income streams. And so I've just taken 3 topics and saying those I'm reinventing. I'm still ordering Uber Eats. I'm not transforming the way I cook, but I'm transforming those other 3 aspects. So also, we mustn't think of it as this huge, big thing, but just take small things and iterate and shift along with those. So yeah, so that's the second thing, is that really going into the enjoying the challenge, enjoying doing the puzzle rather than having the puzzle finished. It's in the doing the puzzle that's really where the magic lies.
Cool. I think we have time for one more.
Yeah, cool. I mean, so I think the real big one, there's a few. One of them's facing the loss of our future memories, which I've spoken about extensively already. It's in my latest book, and really about saying goodbye to our future sort of expectations and our future projections of what they should have been, could have been. And then what happens to us is we fall into this entitlement or poor me mindset that it hasn't happened. I met with a friend, a very successful musician the other day, and she's very sweet and very driven, and I really like her. And when she was speaking to me, and I said this to her, so I'm not saying it behind her back in any way. I said, it seems like you're really entitled. Like, oh my God, I am. And she was complaining that it's so hard and it's not like it used to be. And I was so booked up for so many gigs, and I'm not booked up for them anymore. And and then I tried to teach some music online, and then, then there was load shedding. And for our friends overseas, that means sometimes the electricity goes out in South Africa, which is a shocker for us. But sometimes that happens, and then Zoom doesn't connect. And I was like, look, this is the new world. This is what we're dealing with. For you to complain, it means that 1, you haven't mourned your future memories. 2, you're stuck in the drama and naive and victim mindset. And, victims is such an intelligent way of integrating itself into our head. We either feel entitled that we should, because it's just the way it used to be. 2, we feel sorry for ourselves that it hasn't been like that. 3, we think of anybody more successful than us and we speak badly of them so we can make ourselves feel better, or we're just very superior to everybody. We think we're just smarter than everybody around us. And all of those are victim mindsets. One's angry, one's shameful, one's sad, one's irritable. Those are all victim mindsets. And so really the last piece of this is, once you understand the neuroscience, and then you understand that the world we're moving into is not based on outcomes, but on actual challenges and actually challenging yourself to transform through them. And then to understand that your future is not going to be like it used to be. You and I are perfect examples of that. Traveling all over to not traveling at all, and being on stage to not being on stage, and then not falling into the trap of victimhood or entitlement. And so those are the 3 basic ones. I cover a few more in the masterclass, but those are the 3 basic ones that we need to really get our heads around, workshop them, talk about them, unpack them, and really start to become clear with them, because you can get caught up again. I still get caught up sometimes feeling sorry for myself or irritable, and I've got to snap out of it. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? This is not helping you in any way. You're not moving into an experimental mindset or a growth mindset by being like this.
I think it's been really great. And I think what we should also do at some point is an episode just on what the masterclass entails. Maybe just a mini episode on what are some takeaways we can get from the masterclass. We could do one for Think Week as well, because I think that'll be useful to also be able to put together the entirety of what that will deliver. And so transformation, for example, you've broken down some of the concepts, but if we're going to go and engage in an entire week of it, what does that look like? So I think that's maybe a good idea.
Good idea.
One thing I want to close off just from my side as well is that we've been saying this the entire time, but I just want to phrase it slightly differently as well, which is that transformation is ultimately a total change in state. So I need to look at you, and I need to not be able to recognize you from before. That is transformation. We can't think that transformation is simply change. It's more than that. It's change that's compounded. It's change that's been dramatic. But what precedes external transformation is always going to be internal transformation. and what precedes outcome-based transformation is going to be process-based transformation. And so if we go back to the person that we spoke about who is losing weight, you know, even though they've only lost 1 kg of weight, it's very possible that they've transformed already their lifestyle. So you might not see what it looks like, you know, the 20 kgs down the road, but you've already transformed all of the processes in your life. And that's also transformation. So don't think that transformation is only going to be when I hit the 20 kgs. Also look at the systems, the processes, the habits, the small mindsets. All of those things can create a transformation today that will lead to a transformation down the road.
I think well said. And I also think that making a commitment is very much part of the transformation. That's the hardest thing to do, is like, look, I'm committing to something. And even if you fall off the wagon for a short while, as we all do, but to remind yourself of your commitment to yourself and realize that you have no choice, to be honest. We're living in a world that is forcing us to really think about things differently. And it's a wonderful time to take this time to settle in and to understand what it is that you want to change within yourself while we are in this transformative process. Look, in 2 years' time, we'll be on to the new world. So this is actually where we're at the moment. And it's important to. I look forward to unpacking leadership and organization in the next podcast. There's a lot of juicy points in there that I've been researching from MIT, and I'm sure you're going to have a lot of points as well, because this is your game. Yeah, it's been another great episode. I just want to say my pleasure. I just want to say goodbye to Larry King. He passed away yesterday. I had breakfast with him with Mark Sham a few years ago. He was a fantastic guy in real life. He was solid. He was full of stories. He was a teenager and an adult in many ways. He was just a really great guy to be with. And I'm really sad that he has passed on, and our condolences to his family and his friends. So yeah, rest in peace, Larry King.
And on that note, John, as always, thank you for your time. It's always great spending a Sunday morning with you, recording this podcast. And we really hope that everyone who's listening to this gets a ton of value, that it also assists you in your own process of transformation and helping you to think through what some of the steps might be. As you've been saying, you know, this podcast is meant to be quite practical. It's meant to really help you think through, I guess, the challenges and opportunities in both your personal and professional life. And so we're going to keep that front of mind for ourselves this year as we go about creating content for this podcast. And as always, if you enjoy this podcast, one of the best ways to help us out to spread the word is to leave a review on iTunes. So with that, thank you and goodbye.
Goodbye.